Okay guys, so this is Teacher Nat and today I'll be running through PSLE 2019 English. This will be paper 2, so we'll be starting with booklet A, and what will be happening is that I'll just do a quick run through. I'll do the questions, and for the questions that are a bit tricky, I'll stop, okay? So just feel free to pause the videos as and when you like. Okay, come. So moving on. First 10 questions, alright? Uncle Peter mistook Linus' umbrella for his. Quite straightforward, right? For his. Then with much effort, having gone into preparations, much. Because why? James is sure it will be a success, right? So it means what? There's a lot of effort put in. A lot of effort, correct? So obviously we eliminate each. So it's much, many, several. Well, what's the difference between much, many, and several? Much is uncountable, right? But many and several are countable. What I mean by this, take for example, boys, right? Or pens. Many boys, many pens, several boys, several pens, etc., etc. Okay? So 1, 2, what next? As soon as the clock in front of you. Okay, so what's this? This is strikes 11, right? Why? Because the clock, singular, then therefore singular means what? With an S at the back, correct? So strikes. Oh, this is a bit tricky. Tom gave up looking just as I said he would, blank. So here, what is it? If you simplify it, what is Tom gave up looking? It's the same as Tom did give up looking just as I said he would. So now that we expanded this, it's quite straightforward, right? Did, therefore, it's always the opposite. So it's didn't. Okay? Then this is from the time patient was to why. From the time is the same as from the time is the same as since. Okay, so next question 6. I have loved running all my life. Okay, it's not loved, it's not I am loving will have loved. Nope. Rashida refused to settle for anything. Okay, so it's can't be more, can't be greater, right? So it's less or fewer. Now what's the difference? Again, less is uncountable. Okay, fewer is countable. So what I mean by less countable, take for example, salt, right? Cent. You don't count like 1 cent, 2 cent, right? And likewise here, anything less than perfection, because why? This thing is not tangible. We can't actually count it one by one. Okay, so it's less. Now he's highly sought after, having helped several singers like Damien Fong launch. Okay, now these days the number of people who do their shopping online on the rise. So these days is what? Present, right? So eliminate, can't be was, can't be were. Now what determines the verb here? It's number of people, right? But more specifically, number. So singular number, so is. Okay, now let's go cycling at the park. We can rent bicycles by the hour. What is by the hour here? What it means what? By each hour or by every hour. Okay, so question 11. When Irfan moved up to secondary 1. Okay, why? Because picture this, okay? You start from P1, right? This is, for example, P1. Then your P6 here. Okay, in between is, P2 to 5. Then at the end, it's Sec 1, right? You're always moving upwards. Upwards 1 level. So, in the end, he moved up from P6 to Sec 1. Okay, therefore, moved up. Now, the speaker should use the microphone to something her voice. Now, what does fortify mean, right? Fortify means to strengthen. Okay, and amplify is usually used in the context of sound, okay, to make louden. All right, and then we have magnify. Magnify is, you know what magnifying glass is, right? So it's to make bigger, usually visually. All right, make bigger visually. Then intensify is to make stronger, like the heat intensified. Basically what? The heat became stronger. So here, of course, then we look at this is the context of sound, right? Of voice. So what's the answer? Amplify. All right. Now, no one knew who donated the huge amount of money as donor chose to be blank. So what's the answer here? Answer here is anonymous. Okay. Why anonymous is sort of like unknown identity. Okay, identity. Now, what does obscure mean? Obscure means unknown as well, but it's usually used to refer to, like, take for example, not really concealing identity as anonymous would, but obscure is like an obscure band. You know, have you heard of this obscure band? One that not many people knows. Then indistinct is just unclear, sort of like hazy, foggy. Okay, like you can't really make out those. That's indistinct. Then ambiguous is not clear, but usually we don't use ambiguous in the context of people. We use it like, take for example, the movie's ending was ambiguous. The movie's ending was not clear. Alright? Now next, Margaret feels that the greatest something of living in a big city is the pollution. Greatest burden. What is burden? Burden is something that's a hindrance, alright? An obstacle, likewise, it hinders you. So these are both. They hinder. Okay, what is hinder? It's like a roadblock, alright? Then drawback is cons. Okay, pros and cons. Then weakness, you know what weakness is, right? Like, take for example, my weakness is that I'm very slow. Okay, so it's like a trait, like a characteristic. So what's the answer here? Answer here is drawback, right? Pros and cons of living in a big city. So cons, drawback. Now the shopkeeper, something the customers request for an exchange as the product was defective. Okay, what is acceded to? Acceded is basically to agree with a request to do something. Okay, so now I say that it's quite obvious, right? The answer is acceded to. Now I won't go through proceeded. I won't go through succeeded because I think you guys know that. But what is conceded? In what situation would we use conceded here? So conceded is to admit. It's like admitting to a mistake. So if the sentence was the shopkeeper conceded to the fact that the product was defective, then yes, because why? It will be saying that the shopkeeper admitted the product was defective. Okay, but here the context is what? Context is the customer, he made a request, right? He wants the shopkeeper to do something. So the shopkeeper acceded to. Okay? Question 16. Mrs. Lee stared at a gift from her grandson. She could not figure out what it was. What does figure out mean? Figure out means to solve, right? To solve what it was. So, okay, options here: reveal, unravel, interpret, recognize. Now I don't think I need to go through what reveal or recognize are, right? Now what is unravel? Unravel means to solve a mystery. Okay, usually used to solve a mystery, and interpret means to understand. How do you interpret these facts? How do you understand these facts? So first, now I give you guys the context here. It's quite obvious what the answer is, right? It's option 1. Okay, moving on. It was the size of a thumb, black and rectangular. Handling it gingerly. Okay, handling this is carefully. Alright. Mrs. Lee tried to know a veil to open it. She placed the device back on the table, skeptical that it was of any use. Now what does skeptical mean? Skeptical means doubtful, uncertain. Alright, so you see, I've given you the answer there. It's doubtful. Wary. What is wary? It's a bit cautious, right? Wary. Suspicious. I don't need to go through that as well. Incredulous. Okay, incredulous means how do I say it? It's like a bit, there's an element of doubt as well. But in this case, what's the closest word here? Skeptical is closest to doubtful. Alright. Then 18, Mrs. Lee was once daunted by technology. Daunted means a bit scared, right? A bit scared of. So what's the word here that best fits scared of? It's intimidated. Okay, what is distress? Distress means to be anxious. Okay. Then what is defeated? You guys know that, right? Now baffled. Baffled means a bit surprised, a bit shocked. Okay. I'm a bit baffled at how he has handled how he has handled matters. You know, I'm a bit shocked at how he has handled matters. Okay, so we move on. But ever since she found out how she could use her mobile phone to take photos, she had been snapping away. A few days ago, Mrs. Lee told her grandson that she was facing trouble. So, tackling trouble? No, can't be tackling. Addressing? No. Approaching trouble or encountering trouble? So usually you would encounter trouble, right? Encounter issues. You don't approach issues. What do you approach? You approach people, right? I approach John for a conversation. Okay? Now last question, blah blah blah. Facing trouble storing her many photos which added up to at least a few thousands. At least means minimally. Alright, straightforward, right? This one. Now what's the opposite of minimally? It's maximum. Okay, so maximum would be at most. And minimally at least. Okay? Okay guys, so now I want to move on to visual text. But the thing is, visual text, I'll just be going through the last question, okay? Because the rest are quite manageable. So let's just jump straight to question 28. What is the main purpose of the article? Now usually, right, even for the entire paper, for MCQ, what I like to do is I use the process of elimination. Okay, what this means is that obviously we are given 4 options, right? So we cancel out, we narrow down as many options as we can to the point where we are maybe left with, 2 options, hopefully, or even 1 option. Okay? So what's the main purpose here? Now, what are the obvious options that are obviously wrong? It can't be just disadvantages and advantages, right? Can't be just talking about the interesting way in which dragon kiln firing is carried out. Because why? You have these kind of portions where they're talking to you about what? The festival, correct? So these two answers, they are too narrow, okay? But now what's the first option? First option is what? To provide info on the upcoming dragon kiln firing event, which is, yes, it's true, actually, yes, right? Like I said, they've given you a whole bunch of info here. Now what's option 2? Is to present the dragon kiln as a heritage that should be preserved. Now what do we think, right? 1 or 2? Now if it's 1, essentially it's just what? They can just sum it up with this, right? There's no need for all the previous info here. Talking about the past, the present, the future. But if we read closely, the past, present, future, what's it intended to do? It's intended to teach us, right? To teach us past, present, future. To teach us heritage, correct? So here it's actually deeper than just providing info on the upcoming event. It's actually presenting that it should be a heritage that should be preserved. Okay, in fact, you look closely, right? Sorry, where is it? You look closely at the future here, a hopeful future. It sums it up, right? After all, won't you agree that the dragon kiln should be regarded as part of our cultural heritage and preserved for future generations? So how are they doing this? They're doing this by hosting all these events, by giving you all these bunch of info to show you that, look, this is actually important and therefore we should preserve it. Okay, so again, what's my point here? My point is that usually the purpose, right? It's, you have to look at it in the context of the entire visual text. Okay, look at it in the context of the entire visual text, not just one single part of it. Got it? Okay, now we're gonna proceed with booklet B, but for booklet B, I'll just be touching on a few components, okay? So I'll touching on complete close, synthesis and transformation, and a few questions from comprehension open-ended. Okay, so now let's move on to question 51, complete close. So planting rice is never fun. Bend from morn to the set of sun. These are the blank of a folk song. So of course these are words, right? But can we be more specific, right? How do we be more specific? What's the context here? We know that folk song, correct? And songs, they have lyrics. Okay, so lyrics of a folk song about the laborious process of rice planting. Now, farmers in some parts of Asia, they still sow seeds by hand. When we take into account the hours of something spent on producing rice, so hours of something can't be hours of amount, right? Hours of something. So hours of what? Now we look at it for context, right? The previous sentences. So what did you say? These are the lyrics of a folk song about the laborious process of rice planting. Laborious process. So the hours of labor spent on producing rice. It is a wonder how some people can throw away rice without hesitation. Okay, what is hesitation? It means to think again, right? Okay, without thinking. Okay, so it is an even greater crime to waste food when we think of the millions of people who blank from hunger worldwide. They suffer from hunger worldwide. Okay, about 1/3 of the food in the world gets lost or wasted every year. Not surprisingly, a lot of food wastage, something in rich countries where people can easily afford food. So what's the word here? A lot of food wastage happens or occurs, right? Okay. Now Singapore is no different. Okay, or if you want to write no different or no exception, that is fine as well. Now next, in 1 year, Singapore can generate more than 790 million kilograms of food waste and something equivalent to 2 bowls of food per person a day. So what's this? This is referring to this, right? So this is an amount of food equivalent to 2 bowls of food per person a day. Now, in fact, the problem is expected to grow with our increasing population and economic activities. Food wastage can be due to many reasons. Improper storage can lead to food becoming spoiled, right? And therefore discarded. People also prefer to buy food that looks appealing, so vegetables with slightly yellowed leaves are thrown away, even though they are still edible, right? Slightly yellow, so it's not completely spoiled. It can still be eaten. Okay. Now, in many cultures, people like to be nice hosts, so they tend to be blank when serving guests, often providing more food than necessary. So it means what? They give you way more than you need, right? And therefore they are being generous. Okay? Therefore, we should something our attitudes. We should change our attitudes and habits to prevent food wastage from happening. And if we cannot do so, to recycle food. One country that something food seriously is Sweden. So they treat, right? They treat food seriously. Why with the S? Because one country, singular. Okay, one country that treats food seriously is Sweden, where there is a tradition of storing food for long winter. The culture frowns upon. Okay, these are what we call phrasal verb. Okay, what are some other examples? Example, back off, right? Or, I don't know, what else? Go away. Correct? These are all phrasal verbs, okay? So likewise, frowns upon. No other word, okay? Frowns upon throwing food away and has invented creative recipes for reusing leftover food. Many Swedes separate their food waste at home and something into bins. So, could be place, could be place and throw it into bins located nearby. Food waste can then be recycled and turned into a kind of fertilizer or fuel. Something we can strive to turn food waste into resource. It is impossible to gather every bit of waste. So it tells you what, no matter how much you do, there is still some limit, right? So although we can strive to turn food waste into a resource, it is impossible to gather every bit of waste. And usually, look at it. Start of the sentence, okay? So this is likely a conjunction, okay? Because it's why? It's at the start of the word. sorry, at the start of the sentence. Alright? Okay, now we are at synthesis and transformation. Question 66. Hamid kept quiet as he was too shy to join in the conversation. So we have the word being. So being too shy to join in the conversation, comma, Hamid kept quiet. See, notice how I retain a lot of the words from the original sentence, right? Too shy to join the conversation. Hamid kept quiet. Okay, so again, synthesis and transformation, you don't have to change too much of the original sentences. Just change it slightly such that it fits the word that they give you. Okay, now question 67. If you listen hard, you'll hear the bird chirping. So something, something, blank, something, something. So you will not hear the bird chirping. Okay, here handwriting is a bit ugly, but anyway, I was writing, you will not hear the bird chirping unless you listen hard. Okay, now 68. Paul asked Amy, why do you sing this song? So if you want to convert it, you have to change the tenses. Okay, so Paul wanted to know why Amy had sung that song. Okay, so you notice how I changed did you sing to had sung, and then this to that. Okay, now question 69. The winner was humble. It moved the viewers. Something, the winners, something. So the viewers was or were right? The viewers were moved by the winners' humility. Okay, noun form. Despite her young age, Mala does not rely on others. Mala is not reliant on others despite her young age. Okay, quite straightforward this one. Okay, so take some time to look through and remember. Okay, do not change the original sentences too much. Just change it slightly such that they fit the context of the word that they give you. Okay. Okay, so now we are at comprehension open-ended. So what I'll do is that I'll flash the passage on the screen for maybe like 2 seconds, so you can pause if you need to, and then I'll just be attempting 2 questions. Okay, question 73 and question question 75. Why? Because these 2 questions, they require some level of inference. Okay, whereas the other questions, they are quite straightforward. You can just get the answer from the text. So I just want to explain these 2 questions because they are a bit different. Now, okay, here's the passage. So I'll just flash on screen for like 2 seconds. 1, 2. Okay, pause if you need to. Then 1, 2. Okay, so come. Question 73. What does the nickname The Brain tell you about Brian? Based on lines 13 to 20, explain why this nickname was appropriate for him. Okay, so this is important. We got to refer to lines 13 to 20. But first and foremost, the nickname The Brain. Typically, if someone calls you brainy, someone calls, if you have a nickname for your other friend called The Brain, what are you saying typically? You're saying that they are very smart, right? So what does this nickname tell us? It tells us that Brian was intelligent, correct? Okay, so this part we can just guess ourselves. We don't really have to refer to the text. Now, second part, based on lines 13 to 20, explain why this nickname was appropriate for him. So we look at text, and when we look at text, we always pull out our highlighter. This is what we call close reading, okay? So lines 13 to 20, 11, 12, okay, 13. This part, right? So what does it say here? As usual, Brian, nicknamed the Brain, spoke up. We won't be able to paint another Angsana tree in time. How about projecting his image onto a white screen instead? So what's he doing? He's giving suggestions, right, on how to fix the problem. And what does it say? Okay, but won't the line blah blah blah? That's what Shanti says, right? Then Brian, he pondered a while before replying, what if we place the projector behind the screen? This way the dancers who are in front of the screen will not be affected. So right, so again he's giving suggestions. Then what does Mr. Tay say? He says, right, that might just work. So he's giving valid suggestions, right? And therefore, so this nickname was appropriate. Why? Why do we think it's appropriate? Because he was able to provide suggestions to fix the what? The backdrop problem. Okay, last question that I'll go through for this video. It will be question 75. So explain clearly why some dancers thought that the backdrop incident was a blessing in disguise. 2 marks, alright? And you guys take note of this. 2 marks. So how do we get 2 marks? First mark, you explain the phrase, okay? Explain the phrase. Then second mark, you link to passage, okay? So we ask ourselves, what does a blessing in disguise mean, right? And in this context, what does it mean? So the backdrop incident, what was it? Was something unfortunate, correct? That happened. Yet, okay, I need to see this yet. Yet, it led to something good, correct? So this is how you get your first mark. Just by saying this, you get 1 mark here. Because why? You're explaining what a blessing in disguise is, okay? Yet it led to something good. Since Brian's suggestions, what happened? It led to many positive comments from the audience. Okay, so just like that, you get your full 2 marks. Because why? You link it to the passage, right? Explain that. You explain how it's actually good in the context of the passage, right? Something bad led to something good. And what is something good? Something good is that the many positive comments from the audience. Okay, so just like that, these are the 2 questions I want to touch on in comprehension open-ended, because these are the 2 questions that require you to infer. Now, okay, so I hope you watched this video and I hope this video has been useful for you. And if anything else, I'll see you again, okay? In the other videos, I have videos on 2018 and I'll have videos coming up for 2020, 2021 and 2022. Okay, I'll see you around. Take care. Bye-bye.